So we're going to talk about navigation procedures. We're going to talk about a practical route, so give an example and go through it and apply it. And yeah, it's really just quite a practical maths brief. So like, other than the exercises and other briefs, there's not really any POV or anything like that in this one course. It really is just a, like, this is what you should be looking for, this is where you should be looking. So objective is to apply the skills and procedures required to safely navigate the aircraft from one place to another. Navigation procedures, learn how to do it safely. That's what we're talking about here. Considerations. Planning well in advance is going to be kind of a theme that I would come back to quite a lot in this, because there's a lot of information you're going to throw at them, and it's going to be a lot of, you know, this is the things you need to look up before you go on a big nav flight, really nav flight, really. So you could even just write that up on the board, right? Planning in advance. And it comes back to the more preparation we put in before the flight, the better the flight will be. And a bad flight is usually because we did not prepare for it. Which kind of covers all those points. So prep on the ground, everyone's happy with what a skeleton nav log is, so explain that to the student. You're just putting the numbers that you know aren't going to change, and then hopefully whether on the day you're full, and you're good to go. With that skeleton, you could talk about the fact that it might take you a lot longer to plan one flight than another. You could talk about what time you expect them to show up for a flight, therefore how much time they should have to get ready, and that is what's the word? That is your advice. That's not a set rule. They've got the hour and a half, right, that they have to come in by, but I'm sure you've all experienced a big IFR or one of those AB flights where it's VFR, IFR, and you need a lot more time to plan. So just tell them it's up to them, and you expect them to, you know, plan themselves and figure out how long it takes them personally to get ready. I know when I was a public student, I used to come in 2 hours before every time because I needed that extra time to make sure I felt ready. Alternate routes can be its own discussion, and look ahead. It's definitely more a part 2, part 3 thing, when they've got a bit more experience. Where else can we go if we can't go to the place we initially planned? Interesting in there. Sunglasses, even if you're flying IFR, right? Even though this is a bit advanced, we'll just start talking about IFR, but you can mention it. Phone credit, that $10 minimum, is that the SOP? I believe it is. If you want to fly an aircraft, or if you're POC of an aircraft, you need to make sure you've got phone credit. Anything else crazy? Everyone's happy with that? How much are you expected to have your iPad charged for? 80?
About 90%.
90 is good. It depends on the flight. If I'm seeing someone do a long have, I want above 90. If they're going for a bit of handling, 80 is fine. It depends what they're doing. For me personally, but you should aim for above 90. So, at least 2 to 3 hours for flight planning. 1 hour prior to taxi is when they should be briefing. Which kind of means they should be ready, right? They should have everything done. It might mean they don't have pre-flight done, but yeah, I don't want that time to just think about what you're going to go do, not run around getting ready. Crew members can talk about pilot monitoring there. What are their roles? What can you ask them to do? I've done a flight before with 2 students where the pilot flying, we sat in the briefing room and I was asking all these questions about things and the pilot monitoring was answering everything. To the point where I asked the pilot flying, what have you done to prepare for today's flight? And they said, oh, I did the nav log. The pilot monitoring had done the pre-flight, had done a P chart, had done the weight of balance. So make sure that is clear. Whose job is who? And there was a very nice pilot monitoring and a pilot flying that was obviously a bit overrun with the nav log. But you don't want your student starting to use and abuse their pilot monitoring as well. Extra equipment, do we need to talk about this? Probably not. Make sure all your crew have ultralight flight bags. I don't think there's anything else. I mean, obviously, Diaz, when you're going through this one, you should just talk about what these items are and stuff. I don't think I need to for you guys right now. Right, weather and operational considerations. Checking weather the night before. What are we going to look at? What are we going to use to check weather the night before? Yeah,
Give me a second.
give me a sec. Yep.
Read service.
Mid service? Yeah, I always use that one quite a lot. It's good for just general wind and especially like frost and stuff. Like today, it definitely predicted this frost.
And Windy's quite good as well.
Windy. Met View, VUW. Everyone use that one. Yeah, use what you've got, and I would recommend using multiple. Don't just use one. Look at a few to get it overall, because they're all forecasts. They're probably going to say slightly different things. And emphasize to the student that a forecast is a forecast, right? It's a guess, but it's good to have that picture ready. Let's see what I'll take. Check the graph for, not the R for. Meta, TAF, radar images with proposed route and nearby air drones to build a picture of the expected weather. So yeah, building that picture is the goal for them with weather, right? Not just showing up and going, oh, the TAF says this and you're okay, anything else. Or I always, if someone comes up and tells me what a TAF's doing and that's it, I'm like, okay, we looked at what's actually happening. Because once again, TAF is a forecast. So you need that overall knowledge. You can talk about limitations, so personal met limit. If you're doing a solo, is it actually above the or below the limit? Sorry. What the cloud base is, what the height they're expected to go. Do those things match up? We need to know that. NOTAMs, ARP supplements. This is where in the brief I would have their iPad in front of them and tell them to bring up the supplements and let's see if anything's relevant to us. We can come back to it because we should add our scenario in pretty soon. There's a few slides already, but 5. What is ECT? You know, a lot of these things you can just ask questions. They might know, they might not. So with that weather overall and the operational considerations of it, can we do that? You could also have a discussion with checking whether the night before and seeing it's going to be absolutely horrible. They still have a responsibility to sort out their flight tomorrow, and then if we're just going to assume it's going to cancel. I mean, we can have good ideas, but you still would have to come in and cancel your flight, or contact your instructor and contact them before your show time. Considerations in picking our route. We're all happy with that 10 miles off the track. Nothing crazy there, right? Everyone happy with what a VH set is? What about a PLA? Does anyone not know what a PLA is? Fair enough. Parachute landing area. You can look it up and it's in your abbreviations page when you're happy. So talk about relevant ones here, you know, practical, controlled airspace. We have Oaxaca, we have Palmy, obstacles, campus ranges. So the ranges, danger, restricted military areas. Do we have any of those nearby? Yes, we've got that military area just down to the south. When you're doing a university departure, I always want to say management. When you're doing a university departure, right? So talk about that. Hopefully they've experienced it before when they're trying to point it out. That's what we're looking at. If we're doing a flight to Tokyo, yeah, VHC, it's more relevant to us. NDZs, talk about RAPRAM, CFZs, we have those all the time, ask which ones they have been in. GAs, PLAs, I mean, Tokyo once again is a good example. For those places, we don't want to do stand overhead joins, we don't want to fly overhead the field. We want to keep our distance. Which means if you're planning flight to Rotorua, don't plan to go straight over here to Taupo. You know? So a bunch of questions here, and you can bring up a plate and ask the student all these questions in regards to the plate. So have an actual example and run through it with them. Some of the questions in here might not be found on the plate. So is there food available? I don't know, but is there anybody we can ask? Who has some local knowledge? Is there a number we can call to ask? Where do I park? Usually that's straightforward, but once again, it's quite good to ask somebody. What is the crosswind like? Maybe we're talking about New Plymouth and we're planning on landing on the Seal, but it's all crosswind and they've got that long grass runway that's perpendicular. So just throw a lot of practical examples in there and bring up plates and ask questions. So pick obvious waypoints so that you're not going to get confused. We're all happy with the first waypoint should be the visual reporting point where our departure ends. So that's our Mayfield or our university or Longwood or whatever. And same way for arriving. Any suitable alternate aerodrome, so practical example, we're going to Napier. Where could we go if we couldn't get to Napier? Anyone?
Hastings?
Hastings, or maybe we try and get back from Napier. Classic one that you'll find instructors brief any student that's going to Napier in the weather. There's a little bit if you're around the Gorge, Dennyburg. Hope we've been to Dennyburg before. That's your alternate trying to get back and you can't get back to Barney. So let's get practical examples here. Alternate route. If our cloud base is lower than anticipated or en route winds are stronger than forecast. So once again, a little bit too advanced for them, but a classic is going to Napier and going via Weber IFR array. If that you've got strong winds. But cloud based, let's say we're trying to go to New Plymouth and instead of going through the Stratford Gap, we'll go around the west of the mountain to get to New Plymouth. It'll be a lot easier, won't it? So practical examples. Throw some examples their way. See if you can ask them where they could go instead. Taupo's a good one. We're planning on going Napier and then to Taupo. But there's a heap of cloud over the hills, you know. So how else can you get there? You can go through the desert road, you can go out to the west instead. Discuss those options. In the nav logs we usually don't, well it's not very often we do just navs. There's usually always a bit of handling in there, whether that's manoeuvres or circuits, so make sure that's accounted for in your fuel plan, which we will look at later as well. Go through that example of how to, or go through an example of how to calculate the 12%. So give them some numbers, you're trying to get to this place at this height. What would your 12% look like? Calculate your MSA, so what's the lowest you're happy to fly at? Using nose, what height we're going to go at there. Talk about airspace of course. Cloud base, we might have an idea, and when we get in there it might be different, so have options. Terrain course, yeah, I'm not going to go through in depth for this. We should be pretty happy with that one. Everyone's happy with nose. Just let me know if you guys have questions, because I will go through this relatively fast if I think it's pretty straightforward. So for each leg of the flight, mentally estimate the track and distance in nautical miles before entering and confirming them on AvPlan. So just make sure it makes sense. Do that practical check. If it's like putting something to the Garmin and you see it's 200 miles off, you're going to know something's wrong. So yes, they should know how to do this, but we will go through the example anyway. So just brush through this and talk about how we will go into it soon. True airspeed, we're where do we find these numbers? SOPs. Make sure they know where to find it. Throw out the page number, but maybe you get them to bring up the SOPs and find it and tell you the page number. So, practical example. For the practical example of the scenario is to take some photographs of a swamp near Otane for local waterfowl hunters. We are going Pani to Dannyvirk to Kawhai, Otane, Waipukurau, Dannyvirk with a line underneath which suggests that we're landing there, or at least doing a touch and go there, and then back to Pani. Here's our nav log. So this is where you can go through, you don't have to go through each line, but go through the lines to sort of talk about what we've got here, right? So difference between track and heading. Maybe ask them, what do you think that means the wind is on that first leg? Just getting really thinking about what this means for the day. I'm very happy with that though. I'll just take a bit of time on this slide. Talk about that gap between Dannyvirk, or between, Dannyvirk and Dannyvirk. So we've left a gap there because we're doing a touch and go. So instead of joining a touch and go, we're going to burn a bit of fuel there. So we leave a gap so we can help account for that. Does anyone have any questions about this slide? Once again, just making sure the student knows how to use it, right? I definitely recommend that setting those plates to favourites. Does anybody not do that? No, everyone does it. I've encountered a few students early on that aren't probably doing it. They bring it up every time, and they don't know if it's because they don't see it as being faster, or if they just don't know how to do it. So keep an eye on your students and make sure they're doing those little things there. It does make it a lot easier. Sometimes it'll get to the point where they feel like they're beyond being able to ask, like they should know. It's important that if you don't know, you ask. Plan to track up. Does everyone use that? Yep. You know what I mean by that? Should be the normal. It does make it easier. I know I took a long time to change to that because I was used to just north up, and that's how I always orientate myself. So we're in flight mode. We've disabled the moving map. I always tell my students, if you're going on a solo, make sure it's on. Use what you have. Should be the mentality. And dual flights are for us, pushing you a little bit more. The amount of times I hear examiners like Ross talking about how he doesn't see a student use the autopilot when they've definitely let them use the autopilot. And he said to me that in a CPL, he would make them hand fly for 10 minutes max and then be happy for them to use the autopilot the rest of the flight. So it's definitely use what you have, and it's your job as an instructor to make sure they can use their minimum. Which I feel like you guys probably all felt like you couldn't use it at the start, is that right? Yeah. See, I don't think that's the right mentality. Of course, make sure your student knows how to use the autopilot before they're using it. But that's usually a part 2 thing that we start getting into teaching them how to actually use the autopilot in. Because that's when they start doing big navs and stuff, and that's when it's going to become very helpful. So anyway, sorry, we've got our flight planning on the left and our favourites, how we say favourites on the right. These aren't too out of date, eh? I think those are still kind of what it looks like, the stars anyway. So, here is the start of our flight from Ashurst to Dannyvirk. You can see we've got our 10 mile markers on our track. So I believe you can turn those on and off, so make sure your students got them on. This shouldn't be anything crazy today. There might just be questions here, right? What's our max landing weight? How do you calculate how much fuel you need to burn before you can land? Good questions to ask, because common mistakes we see is what should your fuel burn be? Should it be for your whole flight, or should it be for your place of first landing, eh? So if you're going to go do circuits, how much fuel should you burn according to your according to your weight balance? P charts completed before each nav exercise is required for each aerodrome. So what does as required mean? When do we require these? Questions. But yeah, weight and balance shouldn't be anything new to them. Just ask those niggly little questions to make sure they're doing it right. Multiple load sheets, definitely. Are we refueling anywhere? Are we changing weight at all? Can go through an example if you like. Judge it on your student. Have they done one of these before? No? Okay, then we better go through one fully. But they probably have by the time they get to NetSpec 24. So fuel requirements in accordance with our SOPs. Make sure you're keeping an accurate fuel log. Watch their instructor might have been keeping it the whole time so far. So go through how to keep an accurate fuel log. If handling is carried out en route, you need to compare fuel against your fuel log. So if you're planning on doing handling and you know whereabouts you want to do handling, keep that space in your nav log so you can easily fill it in and keep track. So there's our fuel plan on the left, and you can go through this, how to do this, or remind the student, or ask a bunch of questions here about how they've done it. Another common mistake I see is that people will just throw in the endurance, their 5 hours, because they're going taking full tanks. But as we can see, this person has taken full tanks, but their endurance is 4 hours 51 minutes because of the different stages of flight, right? So make sure you point that out to them, that they shouldn't be lazy. They should actually calculate what their fuel is plus their surplus to give them that endurance. Everyone happy with the endurance box in the top right? So you should fill it out when the max endurance part you can fill out straight away. So these are the things you can do on the ground, so why not? And then once engine starts, you can put that first time in and then you can calculate your dry tanks time, your fuel sub B and your divert time straight away from start. Fuel log. Go through the fuel log with them. How do they fill this in? This might be the part that's quite new to them in regards to the instructor doing the log. I know I personally just take care of it until after the students go for a solid. How to calculate it, how to keep track of it, why that fuel scheduler is so important. Alright, signing out. What do we need? Make sure the DI has all the required paperwork. Anything you can add here is your instructor in today, can you go get signed out by them? Because the DI isn't really a thing for most of the day anymore. It's just find an instructor that can sign you out. Everyone happy with that? You always give a copy of your weight and balance and a copy of your P charts. I noticed that a lot of students don't give me copies of their P charts. Any planning documentation is really important there. Weather's not on here, so if it's a solo, they need to give weather. Everyone should know how to do that, so you can bring that up as well. Yeah, I wouldn't talk about any of the IFL stuff here. Keep it simple. So before takeoff, set departure on your ad plan. That button on the top there in the red circle. And you can see it's changed that leg from Ashurst to Dennyworth from the orange to a magenta. So it shows the current leg that you're on, once you set that. As soon as safely practical, you can set heading. What does safely practical mean? What are we actually talking about here? Not at 200 feet NGL. Once we've done after takeoffs. Once we are in an appropriate space and we have spare attention to give to your teammate down there. Think about doing a Huanui departure. You don't really want to be doing an overhead Huanui immediately because you want to be looking out, making a really good life to go into a busy bit of airspace. anyway, set heading, total turn, time, torque. Are we all happy with that? Does anyone have any questions about total turn, time, torque? Cool. So intercept your track as required. Calculate your ETAs for each lead because you've just put a new set heading, right? And you could just calculate them until your next point, if we think back to our practical example, until that second time we get to Donnybrook, right before that gap. There's no point filling in after that gap, because you don't really know exactly how long you're going to be doing handling for. So you don't have to fill in every single one. Rotate VNC so that your plan track runs up. Or have plan track up on your iPad, right? Might be a little bit of a thing that needs editing from a long time ago. What you can do if your flight plan goes all the way through, or even just estimate how long you're going to be doing handling for, is, as it says there, check what time you're going to be back on the ground. Is it going to work? Are we already pushing time with ECT or anything like that? So that could be really helpful. Yeah, make sure you're identifying a feature that confirms you're on track within the first 10 miles. So just situational awareness, right? Let's start off on track rather than figuring out 50 miles later that we've been way off for a while. So now we've started to put some numbers in. We've got our taxi out time, we've got our set heading time. You can see it there, really small, 2113. Therefore, we can fly our ETA by adding the 9 minutes that we estimated. So 40 at Corfi, Otane, we're expecting call 48 at Waipa, and then 59 at Donnybrook. So that's the time we're expecting to be on the ground at Donnybrook. Does it work with our SAR time? Does it work with ECT? Does it work with the time that we're supposed to be back for the next flight? You know, lots of things to consider. That number is very helpful for us. Another good question. We've got our SAR time. We can figure out our dry tanks time from when we started our engine, right? Does our SAR time make sense with our dry tanks time? Should our SAR time be before or after our dry tanks time? Yeah. Before, right? We should be landing with reserves, which means our dry tanks time should always be after our SAR time. All the times in here are UTC. It's a good idea to keep it all in UTC. You've got your little clock on your PFD in the bottom right corner. Use that time. Make sure your watch is the same time as that, but that time is, I've never seen that time wrong, but still confirm, right? I see a lot of people use their own watch when that time is always right, and it's the time that everyone should be kind of syncing on. So, performance brief, we've aviated, we've navigated, we've communicated, we've done our top of climb checks, we do our cruise checks. In those cruise checks, we're still going through our aviate, navigate, communicate. You can see with our navigate, it gets pretty busy. Fixes 1 in 60, airspace, fuel log, ETAs. There's always something to do. So just point out that long legs, yeah, we should have a bit more time with it. It means also longer leg, we should be confirming our position a lot more, adding more fixes in. Top of descent checks, arrival procedures. Yeah. Go through some examples here again. So I think make it practical into our example or scenario that we're running through. So avoiding terrain and cloud, going through the gorge. Is there any weather en route that we were expecting that is happening? Cruise checks, are we following our main points? Are we staying on track? Can we find our features? Is our fuel still working fine? One thing I always bring up in those FIC cross-country flights that you guys have a bit later on is students, when on these NAVs, end up doing a little bit more instrument flying. They start staring at their heading bug because they're trying to maintain that heading. It's so much easier if they set that heading bug, go, yep, this is it, and they look up and find a feature straight ahead to follow. And that's where they should be looking anyway, right, outside. So really encourage that. Yes, they've set their heading and they're maintaining this heading, but now look up and find something that's going to keep you on this heading. It's 10 times easier. And then you're just going through your scan anyway, right? 80% outside, 20% inside. Check inside, see if the wind's, or if you've noticed a change, and that might be because the wind's changed a bit later in your week. So keep the chart handy, which is easy for us because we have an iPad holder now, so it should be right there. Every 10, 15 or so, you're making sure that you're still on track, which it's not often we have legs that are definitely more than 30, so we should be doing that throughout here. At the appropriate time, look ahead for the next checkpoint. What does it mean by appropriate time? At the time? So we're expecting to be over here to place at 2-2. Do we look up at 2-2? No, we look up before, right? So that's what it means by appropriate time. When you're getting close to that time, you look up and see if you can see that point in the distance or coming up. Don't just get to that point and then look down and go, oh yeah, I am here. I need some sort of anticipation. Revise your ETAs as required. Remember, you've got those extra columns for it. 160, we should go through some examples too, so you can just brush on this part when it's talking about 160. Radio usage every 30 minutes at a minimum. We don't need to tell someone we're flying down the coast program that we're every single waypoint, as we all do. People do. So you can give them as an example of like too many. Some people say you can't have too many, but you definitely can. As required, right? So are there other people that are nearby that you want to stay clear of, that you want to let them know that you've got them inside or anything like that? Keep it nice and simple. Who you are, where you are, where you going. Where you are includes altitude. Check SAR time. Keep comparing your times to SAR time. If you find that you're updating all your ETAs to later and later and later because of wind or whatever, or you've had to divert and go around some weather, is that going to affect your SAR time? You could talk about how to revise your SAR time. So, your contact base, right? That's option number 1. When can't we contact base though? When we're too far away, when we're at too low of an altitude, what are our options there? So you can contact Christchurch Information and ask them to contact Massey Base for you. Maybe you can get a hold of another Massey aircraft that can get a hold of Massey Base. You can ask them to transfer it over. We don't want to be using our cell phones. Maybe we land and use our cell phone. But there's options before you get to using a cell phone, right? At each waypoint, talk turn time talk. Record actual time overhead. And the actual remaining fuel compared to the fuel remaining. So that's an important point to bring up there. We're comparing, are we burning the right amount of fuel? If we see that we're suddenly 10 gallons less and we can't say why, we might have just discovered we've got a fuel leak or something like that. You know? So situation awareness. Map reading from map to ground, going through the process of time map ground. So here's the practical procedure for the student to use. Read time map ground from last pinpoint. So 4 minutes is equaling about 8 miles. Map reading wise, you're going to go from big features to small features. confirm fixes with at least 3 ground features. So don't just look at one ground feature and go, yep, there's a road, sweet, I'm on track. Right? There's a road, plus an intersection, plus some power lines. Those all make sense for me being here. Everyone know how to mark a fix on their iPad? Yeah, cool. Talk through the student, make sure they know how to do that. So, back to our example. After departing the Palmy control zone, the crew found themselves off track due to transiting through the Manatū Gorge. We're going to pinpoint their position using time map ground. So the time is 2118, 5 minutes after heading. 5 minutes means they probably travelled 10 nautical miles, right? 2 minutes per mile. And this could be a question. 5 minutes, how far do you reckon we could have gone? How many miles could we have gone that distance? Sorry, in that time. So, we're looking for 10 miles east of Palmy. So we're expecting to be around Woodville, just from that small bit of maths. Now, we're going to do ground and confirm visually if that's correct. So that's our time. We've figured out the time, therefore the distance. We've figured out on the map whereabouts we should be, and now we're looking outside to confirm that. So here we are looking outside. We look to our left. What do we see? Anyone see any features they've noticed before?
Windmills.
So you can see, so in this picture, what can we see? We can see Warrady Peak. How to do it, dim it. You can see Warrady Peak on the top there. You can see the wind turbines. You can see the ranges on our left, right? So that looks pretty good. Straight ahead, should be able to see Dannyburg if you don't have so much glare, but that's us looking north, right? Nice and easy and familiar for all of us right now because we've seen these places plenty of times. Just give a bit more of what you're looking at to the student. So we're trekking north in this case, you know, we're looking at ranges. Where's that put us? There's our view straight ahead of the nose. There's our view down on the right, looking down at the ground. So that must be Woodville, right? So now we can add a fix to the VNC. And that might just be, give them a bit of a background and ask them where they think they are. And you can have them up with their VNC and actually drawing that 10 miles out and going, okay, around about here, and then pointing out to them in those pictures what they're looking at. We add our fix, and now we can see we are off track. So now we'd go for a 160. To get back on track, all we need to do is intercept the track, so we could just turn left and get back over, get it. We could just visually track to Dannyburg, because as we saw from that picture, well, it might be a bit hard, but you could probably figure it out if you're actually there. Photos are always a bit harder to see. So we could just carry on visually to Dannyburg. We could do a direct 2 using the G1000, or we could go through a 160. So of all of these things, the 2 easiest options are going to be visually track to Dannyburg. In my opinion, that's the easiest one if you can see it. Just do that, right? It's super easy. If you can't see it, this next best thing is going to be just use the G1000. Use what you have. As the instructor, it's your guys' job to challenge them and make sure they can do it without that stuff. So 160, we're off track due to a diversion and not wind. We only need to apply a correction angle. So our fix and 10 mile from our fix and our 10 mile markers. We are 2.5 right of track with 10 miles to go. So what that means is 15 degrees. So how do we get there? How do we actually do a 160? It skips it, but that's fine. We can go through it. Anyone?
Cross track divide 60 times your distance to go.
Sorry about that.
Cross track divide 60 times your distance to go.
So 2.5 times 60?
I just don't look at it.
Does anyone have an easier way? Because we're going to do it in flight.
Distance to go, distance gone, 360 times your track area.
So
like 10. Well, sorry, Yeah. 60. No, that's more complicated. 60, 50.
Just something we can just make easy maths.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Let's swap the check here out. Wait.
60, 70 times 200.
So it's going to be 6, right? 6 times 2.5, and that's what gives us the 15. Yeah. So let's go through some harder examples then. What if it was 3 miles and 18 miles? Can we do that in our head? That's the question. Sorry? My question is, how do we make it easy so you can quickly do it in flight?
You round up 18, 20.
So let's make this 20 to make it easy, and now we just go, how many times does 20 go to 60?
3,
Times by this,
9.
9 degrees. See how easy you can make it if you just round those numbers? And the trick there is find a number that easily goes into 60. Watch, there's plenty, right? 10, 15, 20, 30, 45. It's pretty common that you'll find a number that can easily get adjusted into that. And you might be slightly off, but it's going to still give you a correction angle that's going to get you close enough to identify, and then hopefully start tracking visually. So make it really practical for the student. Make it easy. Yes, you should know the exact maths, but we want to be able to do this quickly in flight without having to pull out a calculator. Anyway, as just going through the last bit of the day, your new heading, so you're going to be going to the left by 15 degrees. You can talk about minuses and pluses here. I always find it's better to just think about, okay, I want to go to the left, so I'm going to go 15 degrees that way. You know what I mean? You can definitely do plus or minus. It's just I find that's a little bit easier for people who aren't maths orientated, and people that are maths orientated usually catch on to that pretty easily anyway. So just en route, our time is now 2135. Our actual time at Daybrook was 2124. So once again, you can get them to do the maths. How many minutes is that? Therefore, how many miles? So 9 minutes, 18 miles, which puts us around about in that orange circle. And now we're choosing features to confirm. So what features can we see in that picture? You guys should see this good. On your paper anyway, but we've got rivers, we've got power lines, we've got buildings, we've got all sorts. So in this case, we've picked that river to our left. It's not the best one in my opinion because there's one before it and another one a few miles after it, so it could be easily mixed up with the others. But that's a great point to make of, yes, we can still use it because we're going to use other items with it, but we don't really just use one feature. This is why we're going to use 3 features to confirm. So looking at the ground, so remember this is just time at the ground again. Looking at the ground now, on our left we can see a river. Is it the right one? Hopefully, don't know yet. Now we look out to our right. So once again, a bit of glare makes this quite hard to see, but you can just make out that lake. The light shines on it quite nicely to actually light it up. And you can see that town just there. Might be hard for the students to see that in this picture. Point out that it should be a little bit easier if you're interested in the aircraft. So, we've got those 3 features. We know where we are now, we can add a fix. And note where you are in regards to that river. Helps you really confirm exactly where in that orange circle you were. So, time at ground. Re-emphasize that. After landing, are your passengers all sorted? Have you taken your mum for a flight? You need to make sure you escort her back into the building. Do your passengers know where the bathrooms are, or facilities, or anything like that? Terminate your start time with the DAI. Is it you walking into this building and cancelling it? Is it you calling up on the phone to cancel it? Don't forget to cancel it. Secure the aircraft if required. Give your nav log to the DI. If you are doing it overnight somewhere, you can always email that to them. Complete your flight times, post-flight times. Hand in the aircraft satchel. Return all the equipment. Everyone happy with that 12-month retention? I'm explaining what that means. So your completed flight log, we hold on to it for 12 months, just in case we need that data for any reason. And there's our completed flight log. Note our clearance and notes, we've filled in some information in there for ourselves. You can see we've put our 1 in 60 calculation to the right there in the clearance and notes. We've got our taxi out, taxi in time now. All our fuel logs been filled in. We had a few amended ETAs as we were going through the flight. And the other side of it, when we got back to Geneva, you can see we've circled that 12.9 because we've gone, hey, do we have the number of fuel to get back to Palmy from there? You got some answers filled in, you've done your endurance calculations, and that's what a completed fuel log looks like. So we've kept track of that fuel. Our last changeover on the tanks was at 2230. And here's the photos of the drain on the scenario. Where I'm looks confused. Remember the scenario where we're going to take photographs? I don't talk about the photograph thing. So yeah, we did our scenario. Mission accomplished. You would think that's the end of the brief, but we've got a few more slides to go. 47 minutes in, we're breezing through. So, loss procedure. This is one of those procedures that it's just learn the steps, learn the motions, go through the motions. Don't panic, ensure you're still aviating. So the aircraft's configured for the situation you're in. Maybe we're lost due to bad weather, so we might be in full phys config. Is the autopilot on? Can we use the autopilot? From our last fix, I'm going to check heading, wind, and drift, check the time, and from that, we should be able to estimate the probable area we are in. Everyone happy with the cone of uncertainty or the circle of uncertainty? Yes? No? Does anybody not know? So explain that to the students. What does that mean? That's us going, yeah, we've been travelling about this direction for this long, so that's about this many miles, so we're in about this area. Also adding on to that, about this heading might be a range between headings. Hence it could be a cone. Circle-wise it could just be, I think this point, but I'm going to draw a circle because it could vary this much around this point. Using map reading to determine position, so big to small. So what is a big feature or large? What do we mean by big and small features?
Built up area.
So terrain? Yeah. So ranges, that's a big feature. The ocean, that's a big feature. Valleys, coastlines, mountains, all that sort of stuff is going to be nice big features for us to use. Small features? What are we talking about with small features? Power lines, roads, sometimes forestry can be a good small feature on your map. Intersections in particular, rivers, creeks. Everyone's been looking for a creek or a river and realised it's a tiny little creek that they're actually looking for. Yeah. So I personally like to talk about big, medium, small. Because when I talk about medium, I'm talking about like large towns, a decent sized lake, let's say Lake Taupo is a large feature. Whereas that lake that we were looking at before is more of a medium feature. Yeah, so I personally think there's a medium in there as well, because small features to me are looking around and looking at the roads and the power lines and stuff very close by. Whereas I like a bit of a in between as well. But you could count that as large features too. So we're reading those features, we're confirming our position with ground features, remember more than one. If required, divert once position is known. So it might be you just carry on because you know where you are now and you're looking at carry on going where you were planning on going, or you divert somewhere else. And you can talk practically for a student. If they're really lost, New Zealand's got some pretty big features that you can use anyway, right? If you can find a coast, you can figure out where you are. Your only concern from that is going to be airspace, busting airspace in the texture one. What if you get really lost? You really can't figure out where you are. What's your last option?
Precautionary.
Yeah, cool. So you could do a precautionary, just get on the ground. It's better to get on the ground than stay very lost and not know where you're going. Other options, radar, get controller to help you. Do the students know what the score code is? Because radar will want that too. So if radar says, oh yeah, tell me what you're scoring, and the student goes, I have no idea what that means. They should, but you know, they might lose their heads at this point if they're that lost. We can draw on our map, go through how to draw on your map with the students. Everyone should be happy with how to do that, right? There's the example there. And you can see they've drawn a circle around where they think they are. The SOPs also have so this is kind of the only aspect that talks about list procedures, and it's a little bit bare bones in my opinion. So point out to them that the SOPs have a list of things to do, but go through fully with them how to do it really. Remember the SOP list is like number 1, admit you're lost, and then number 2, get the aircraft restored, and maybe find a feature and fly around. And you can set the autopilot up in roll mode so it just flies around this point for you. Do you want to be in Corvus, you know? Climb up, gain altitude, see if you can see anything else. Lots of options in there, and it just goes through all those things you can consider. But yeah, practice-wise for this, make sure you have a look at the SOPs and think about a bit more detail how you do the lost. Right, diversion, make the decision to divert early, calculate a new, choose a prominent feature from which to carry out the diversion. If you are going to divert somewhere, and it comes back to those initial things we talked about if we're off track slightly, can we visually see where we wanted to go? Can we just visually track there? Can we use the G1000 and do a direct turn? Otherwise, calculate a new heading with your map. Doesn't have to be exact, but you can come up with a rough one. Figure out the track, apply a bit of wind, make an adjustment for that. Then you should know the expected distance, and then you can calculate a ETA as well. So we get to Otane, and they've been told to divert me to Coronga Hill. So you can see we've drawn that line on the map, and that's told you the track. So our track to Coronga Hill is 157, it's 22.7 miles away. From that we can apply those calculations to figure out what heading we want, how long it's going to take us, therefore what our ETA is. That's the bare bones style, right? And it's not that hard. So make sure your students know how to do that. One thing that's also good to point out here is that if you've got a general heading, you can just start heading that direction and then calculate the ETA on the way, right? Because you knew the distance. Just because you start tracking it way isn't going to change the ETA now. But I know from my perspective it's a bit frustrating to watch a student say, oh yeah, we're lost, I'm at this point here, and I want to go to, let's say, Moanui or something, so I want to go that direction, and they just keep flying in the opposite direction while they do all their calculations. It's a big waste of time. At least stay in a circle, but the minute they start tracking in the opposite direction, looking down, figuring stuff out, it's like, well, that time's wrong because we're going the opposite way, which is doubling the time to get back, right? Right, aircraft management. We've talked a few times about SOPs, so make sure they know those references to the SOP. At the end of the day, aviate, navigate, communicate, whatever happens. keep an eye on your fuel. Long flights, make sure you use the trim. Reduce that workload. Passenger briefs, has anyone done a passenger brief before? Get someone to show you one in the class. Ask some questions here. As we've already mentioned, it's very busy. There's a lot of stuff to do. There's a lot of information to process. That planning is going to make a big difference. So make sure you've got all that planning on the ground beforehand to make it easier in flight. But lots of things to manage here. KDPs, what are the KDPs en route that we probably haven't really talked about, right? So 2, 3, 4, are we? Yeah, 4 I guess. When do we make those points? I'm just going to skip through the slides. Does anyone have any questions about that one? Examples here: atmospheric effects on visibility, anticyclonic bloom you could talk about here, just talk about inversion layers, you could talk about all sorts. Distance judgment is something that they're going to have to build, so they're probably not very good at this stage. Get them to practice though. Once again, it's your job as an instructor to make sure they're trying those hard things so that they get better at them. Students are very, very hesitant at the start to look at a place and go, oh yeah, we're 5 miles away from that. They're always going to start staring at the MFD to figure it out. And you're the one that's going to be like, no, hold on, let's try. And just start building on it. And you'll tell them, okay, no, actually it wasn't 10 miles, it was only 5. But now you know, that's 5 from this height. But you've got to keep encouraging them or else they won't learn. And they're always afraid to be wrong about it, and it's like, no, it's fine. You're just building that judgment. Yeah, so PFM judgment as well. Mountainous terrain, we're talking about predicting horizons and stuff there. Passenger considerations. Hopefully you've taken friends or family up for your first flight and hopefully you care for them, check on them. Make sure they're sick bags, make sure they are comfortable on the seat, make sure they know where everything is that they need to know, so emergency items. If you're flying with a licensed pilot, remember they can assist with a few things. You aren't legally allowed to give them control of the aircraft, but if you need to, you can get them to do a radio call, and you can always have them looking out for features, help you find where you are if you're lost, and definitely looking out for other obstacles and hazards. And then we've got a bunch of questions to finish off. There's that practical flying guide 1 there, so another resource they can go look at. Does everyone know the answers to all those questions? Hopefully. Hopefully students do by the end. Cool, so that took me an hour, and that was breezing through a lot of it. So you can imagine it's quite a hefty one. Anyone have any questions at all? Anyone just needs a break? So, what solos have we got today?